Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media and What's Up Kansas City. And today, this is a real special guest because I met this young man through my brother-in-law, Leon Harden, and he's president of the Kansas City Crime Commission, Mr. Rick Armstrong. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Carlos.
Hey, Rick, I know we're talking about the Crime Commission, but on my interviews, I like my audience to know who's talking. Run it down, how you got to become the president of the Crime Commission, your past, and run that down from the time you came out of high school all the way up to where you at now, please.
All right. I identify myself as a Kansas City, Kansas boy. Grew up in the little community of Argentine. Graduated from J.C. Harmon High School in 1978. Went right to the police department as a police cadet. There was a federally funded police cadet program at the time. Pretty innovative, and it was a great way for them to attract a diverse group of young people. I think that will tie into our conversation later on and kind of tell us a lot about who I am. Went to the police department as a cadet. At 21, went through the academy and became an officer in 1981. Served 10 years in patrol, in planning and research and recruiting on the SWAT team, on the motorcycle unit, and eventually became a sergeant to a lieutenant. Did some work on community policing and did the implementation strategy for KCK on community policing. And that really sunk me back to my roots of working with the community, really getting actively involved in understanding that for a city to be a safe place to live, it took the police and the community working together. And I think Kansas City, Kansas is a wonderful example of what can happen with a city. If you go back to the late 1980s in Kansas City, Kansas, we didn't have a place you could buy a large appliance. There was no place to go recreate. There was not a theater. Our kids had nowhere to go for recreation and fun activity. People drove around our city and not through our city. And with leadership, with our elected officials, our county administrator, this consolidation of government between the city and the county, and the police department adopting the community policing philosophy of policing. And we just completely redesigned how we were approaching what we were doing. And I think those years, those 1995 forward, you see Kansas City, Kansas looks like a different city. We consolidated government. We attracted a great economic model with the Legends and the Kansas Speedway and Nebraska Furniture Mart and Cabela's and all those things that attracted people to come visit.
Those were big booms for KCK.
Well, we became the number one, number two, number three, and number four biggest attractions in the state of Kansas with the Speedway, with Cabela's, with Nebraska Furniture Mart. Interesting enough, people came from all over the state to view our venue and to use the services we had, and also the Schlitterbahn Park. So with that being said, we changed that, but we also addressed crime, working with our community members. And we established with a group called Livable Neighborhoods Task Force and part of the city initiative, we established over 250 neighborhood watch groups. We worked with all of our businesses, and collectively we began to just work together.
This program was brought to you by DeCapo's Cookies. Support your local bakers.
Our law enforcement, the police officers within KCK, and we really saw our city turn around. We went in 1995, we had over 2,400 violent crimes and 75 homicides. And by 2005, we'd cut those numbers in half. And when I was chief of police in 2012, we had less than 700 violent crimes, down from 2,400. And we had 21 homicides, which was a 60-year low. And I would just say that was the effort of our citizens, our community, and the work of the men and women of the police department working together in partnership to make it a more livable city. And certainly in KCK, we recognize we're far from perfect. But what we did find is working together as a community, we can make our community a better place to raise our kids and for everyone to live and recreate, and for the senior citizens to have a safe life as they enjoy the twilight years. So I would just say that my experience, again, from the police department years, I was actively involved in chiefing in 2013 when I was approached by the Kansas Public Schools about the idea of them creating a police department. It was in response to the Sandy Hook mass shooting in Connecticut. They were thinking about arming their security officers. and I had suggested that they could develop their own police department. That was allowed in Kansas, and that would be better trained officers was much more important than just having guns. And so as I was working with them and consulting with them, they enticed me that I could retire and come there and start a police department. It was a great opportunity for the city, for the school district, and for me personally to work in the school district for 2 years. 24,000 students, preschool all the way through high school, and again, it's my hometown. It's my personal school district I grew up with. My wife and I both went through the public school system in KCK. And in the 2 years I spent there, I thought I'd found my final resting place from a career standpoint. Loved the kids, loved the excitement, just saw the work that was being done by the district, by Dr. Lane at the time, and just how I fell in love with the kids. I mean, just every day encouraged, excited by what our youth looked like. And but while there, I was actually approached about the Crime Commission position becoming available, and I wasn't interested at the time, but some friends suggested I at least talk with the board, and saw an opportunity to be engaged on a broader metropolitan base of impact than just in one area. Although I miss the kids every day, I don't really miss being a chief. That's especially given our climate today in America. But come to the Crime Commission, we operate 4 programs that we think make a real difference in Kansas City. And I get to still work with our community, our business partners, and also our law enforcement at the local, state, and federal level, with the idea that can we keep Kansas City safe and make it a safer, better place for people to live.
All right. A lot of my audience, I would think, because I didn't know until my brother-in-law, Leon Harden, and yourself came over for your first interview, how I met you back in the day. Tell our audience what the Crime Commission does.
All right, the Crime Commission has been around 71 years this year. In fact, we're about ready to celebrate our 75th completed year of operation. It started in 1949 in direct response to public corruption, organized crime, kind of a sense of lawlessness in Kansas City. And out of a grand jury, a group of individuals came together and formed the Crime Commission. It was kind of common across the country in the late 40s because of coming out of Prohibition, and in World War II, there was a lot of unsettled activities going on that threatened safety and security in many cities across the country. So Kansas City, Kansas adopted this Crime Commission, and its initial charter was to work with the business and civic leaders to hold government accountable for integrity, for efficacy, and the idea that to help ensure that organized crime was being enforced and was being investigated and addressed, so we could have a ethical government, including an ethical police department. And so those early years, the 50s into the early 60s, that continued to be the mission of the Crime Commission. But as cities began to improve and efficacy began to be more a part of requirements for government, the Crime Commission began to adopt programs. In 1982, we adopted the Crime Stoppers program. We were the first in the region.
I remember that Crime Stopper program when it first started.
Yeah, it was very different. It was very unique, and it's been successful from the very beginning. There's Crime Stopper programs in all 50 states and across the world, and our program continues each year to win national and international awards for just being ran so well. We've had, and again, as those who know about Crime Stoppers, you can text or download the P3 app, whether you're a student or whether you're an adult, and you can anonymously report crime. And we have never had a person's identity ever revealed. And that's not only our Crime Stoppers program here in Kansas City, but since 1982 and the inception of the program, no individual has ever had their identity revealed by the Crime Stoppers program. And again, we've helped solve over 25,000 felonies since 1982 and over 660 homicides. So it's been a very effective program. It's also helped save 15 young people's lives who were in the act of committing suicide, where a friend or a fellow student or friend notified us through the Crime Stoppers tip app, and we were able to intervene.
Do you give rewards out? See, I was interviewing, I don't know whether it was I think it was Mark Sharp or Ashley Bland. They're down at the state, and they were talking about rewards for people giving information. Are you tied up with any of that? And they were saying that the rewards needed to be a little more hefty if they wanted people to. Can you speak on that?
Absolutely. In fact, it's pretty exciting. When I arrived at the Crime Commission, a homicide tip, a successful homicide tip that led to an arrest was worth $2,000. When Rick Smith became chief, one of the first things he started talking to me about was raising that number up for Kansas City, Missouri homicides. And we have always had the process, if someone wants to put a supplemental reward, they can always bump up that reward, make it bigger. And there's been cases all over the metro, both on the Missouri and the Kansas side, where people come together after a particularly violent crime, a homicide or a sexual assault or child abduction, and they wanted to raise money to increase people's interest in being able to report the crime.
I've seen it as high as 25,000.
Well, here's what you need to know. Effective last year, the city of Kansas City, Missouri bumped our supplemental reward for Kansas City, Missouri homicides up to 25,000. So today, if you call in and give us or use our app to text us a tip, it's worth 25.
Tell them where to get the app from while we're talking about that. If you can do that,
wherever you get your apps, whether it's the Apple Store or Google, wherever you go to your app site, you can just download P3, and you'll see that it's right there. It creates a nice little logo. While we're sitting here talking, I'm going to pull this up, and you'll get an idea of what it looks like. The screen will look like this. So how well that shows.
Yeah. All right.
But it looks, the app itself looks like it's just a blue background with a P, and it's called P3. And download that, and again, we have so many firewalls, we will never know who you are. We have so many ways to prevent us ever knowing. If you told us your name, we tell you not to tell it, and we never record it, and we don't write it down, and we erase anything that anyone sends to us that would in any way identify them, because that is the value of our program. It's true anonymity, that you can do this without any worry or concern that people are going to know that you gave us the tip. And today it's worth $25,000 for a homicide tip in Kansas City, Missouri. Never again, how critically important is it today? Because we're over 135 homicides in Kansas City, Missouri year to date.
I know this is not your, I don't think it's your bailiwick. I don't know why I'm saying I know. But you know, Trump and the feds have moved into town to try to deal with, supposedly, I don't know, on that either, drug and unsolved homicides and what have you. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think I understand it a little differently, probably because of my background. When I was chief in Kansas City, Kansas, we had a very great working relationship with our law enforcement partners. And whether those partners are other cities who would join us on the Kansas side, our partners in Kansas City, Missouri, and the other Missouri agencies, that there's a number of organizations where the chiefs and the law enforcement people meet regularly. There's the Metro Chiefs organization, where every month all the chiefs in Kansas City on either side of the state line, our state leaders and also our federal agents in charge come together to talk about issues and to make sure that we're sharing resources. I don't have a distrust. Obviously, I've spent my career in law enforcement. I don't have the same distrust that others have, and I understand that I come from a different point of view, and I certainly respect that other people have had different experiences. But what I do know, and what I spent my life doing, is to recognize our job, and my commitment is to keep Kansas City safe. I've done it since I was 18. I've been committed to saving lives and doing everything I can to make everyone's life a safer place for them to be whoever they are and to do whatever they want to do. I think that's the freedom of being an American. But
so what do we got up for the Crime Commission about right now? I know when Leon introduced me to you, I did a couple of commercials for the, what was it? Guns and Hoses. Guns and Hoses. Are we going to be able to do that this year? Because that raised a lot of needed money for activities that the Crime Commission does. I wanted you to talk about a little bit, because the main thing that I know about the Crime Commission, when one of these firefighters or officers get killed in the line of duty, You'll rush over there with the big check right away. Talk
That's our
about
goal.
that.
So our 4 programs, and I'll give them in order. And
All right.
Sound on them as you like, as much as you like to. Crime Stoppers became our program in 1982. In 1996, we started a program called the Metropolitan Community Service Program. And so when you go to court, someone gets a ticket, someone gets arrested for urinating in public or throwing out a bottle, they get a citation or a misdemeanor arrest. They typically go to court, and then they get a fine that they have to pay. What the MCSP program is that we work with 92 different courts across the metro, and when they assign community service. So instead of giving a fine, a lot of people don't have the money to pay these big fines. You get a ticket, citation. You can actually work with the prosecutor's office in most jurisdictions in the metro and say, hey, I'm willing to do community service. They then give that over to the Crime Commission, to our community service program, our MCSP program. We have individuals there who will help them go to different places to help clean up Kansas City, to help do good service. This year, we've been doing a lot of work with harvesters, helping put meals together so people get fed. And so it's a great way. It's kind of a quid pro quo. It's a great win-win for everyone, and it's truly restorative justice. You violate on one end, and instead of taking your money, you invest in time back in the community to make the community a little cleaner, better place on the other end, or help serve meals. Then in 2003, we started the SAFE program, and that's what you were just referring to, the Surviving Spouse and Family Endowment Fund. Originally, we gave $3,000 to a fireman or police officer or paramedic who was killed in the line of duty. We would take a check within the first few days after death. Over the years, from 2003 until 2016, we raised it from 3 to 5, from 5 to 10, from 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and now it's $25,000. If you're killed, if an officer, firefighter, paramedic is killed in line of duty, we disperse a check for $25,000 to the surviving spouse or children.
And they tell me y'all do that with the quickness.
We've been within 24 hours since I've been here most every time, unless there's reasons why we can't meet with the family. We've been there within 24 hours to take the check. And this year's been particularly difficult. From firefighter McCormick out in Raymore, we had, was killed fighting a fire. And then we also had a firefighter and a paramedic who died from natural causes while on duty, and we give that family $5,000. And then Officer Mosier over in Oklahoma Park Police Department was shot and killed. And
Rick, boy, I like you. Man, you got it like a movie screen. Everything that's happening, my mind couldn't remember. I had to have my cheat notes.
Well, it's,
and you know the names.
Well, they're real people. I think that's the part, Carlos, when you and I talk and what Leon always shared to me, we're all people, and none of us are certainly not perfect, but working together, living together, trying to be supportive of each other. I mean, that's the best of what we can do as human beings. And I believe that the work the Crime Commission does is, it's been pretty quiet. Our organization's been around a long time, and many people have never heard of us. And quite honestly, I would say that's okay with me, as long as we're there doing what needs to be done. But in a world where a lot of things are happening, the opportunity for us to hopefully be a voice to bring people together, this idea of a community of one, and the idea that we can, no matter what the obstacle or challenges are, if we all work together, we can make it better. It may not make it perfect, but I've never found a situation where, we're all still alive, that we can't make it better. And if someone has died in a way that should have been prevented, then can't we prevent the next thing from happening? Can't we get involved in doing something to make it better going forward?
So I asked you, but I guess we're talking about so much. Are we going to have the guns and hoses this year, or
so we're scheduled.
Postponing?
Well, we were scheduled for the Guns and Hoses event to be June of this year, and of course, COVID has upset all the apple carts for everyone. We moved it to December, and then as we were progressing through what the ups and downs and limitations and openings of gatherings was going to be, and trying to pay attention to what here in Kansas, Missouri, what Mayor Lucas was supportive of. When we decided to make our luncheon, which is coming up on the 25th of September, a virtual event this year, we made the same decision at that time to make our Guns and Hoses, postpone that until the spring of 2021. You can't really do a virtual event to capture the excitement of the firemen and police officers boxing together.
Hey, Rick, audience, after this interview, we're going to cut, and I'm going to put the promotion we did for Guns and Hoses. Those firemen and policemen, they be knocking each other out. You hear me? The women, the men, they go at it. And you would love to go to that event.
It's a fun event, and it's all for good cause. And I think that's, for the Crime Commission, we have a couple of golf tournaments a year. We have our luncheon, and we have the Guns and Hoses event. And then we have another event coming up, which we are currently scheduled to have. Our Crime Stoppers program does a fundraiser we try to raise money for those payouts, for those rewards. And we call it the event at Arrowhead. And we've always used the tents there on the south end of Arrowhead Stadium to have our event. But last year we moved inside. And this year we're going to be back inside Arrowhead on the 21st of November. We have a great auction. I'm talking Mahomes jerseys, Mahomes helmets, Travis Kelce, I mean, you name it, across the board, all the players, Andy Reid. The Chiefs are very supportive of the work we do at the Crime Commission. And they give us a lot of sports memorabilia. And it gets auctioned off for a good cause, fun event. We have it catered for food there at Arrowhead. Just a great event. So that's scheduled for the 21st of November. And that appears after the luncheon, which is going to be virtual. The next real in-person event will be the event at Arrowhead.
Is there anything that we haven't covered, Rick, that you'd like to talk about?
I think the only thing I would like to say is that, we're living in such difficult times. It seems cliche, but we use the word unprecedented. I'm 60 years old, and in my lifetime.
Got you by 9 years, Rick.
Well, you look younger, so now I'm really embarrassed, Carlos. I would say that this is the most difficult year of my life, and I can't say in all of history, but definitely in my lifetime, in my adult history, this is the most challenging. COVID-19 has put all of us at risk. I mean, health risk. It's affected our business. It's affected our kids going to school. It's affected our parents who might be living in retirement homes. I mean, we're all affected. It's brought us all together. But I also think that bringing us all together, or at least in a common cause, it's also created incredible stress on everyone. And I believe that there has to be an outlet for that. And unfortunately, I think this year, it was the George Floyd killing in Minneapolis that was that flashpoint that created an outlet for people to vent anger and frustration. And I'm not in any way undermining the value, the importance of the social justice movement. But I would say that my experience in law enforcement, and I've wore the uniform for 37.5 years. I work daily still with law enforcement. The vast majority of our men and women in law enforcement truly would give their life to save any citizen. I think that obviously the situations that have happened wrongly need to be addressed, and in no way am I trying to or would I ever suggest those have to be dealt with.
Who did I do yesterday? One of the councilmen, second district. We talked for about an hour, and as I brought up you and my brother-in-law, and I was like, my brother-in-law, my godfather called the Capo Crime Commission. My other brother-in-law retired off the police force. I was like, I have like you said, you have a different viewpoint, how you came up, because I wasn't the best citizen in the world, but my brother-in-law, Ron Harden, the police stopped me a couple of times in my younger days and what have you. And it was like the family, because Ron was on the force, and when he's with the family, he's always calling the police the family. And, they talk to me correctly, and it might be because my brother-in-law is the police, but I have mixed feelings because I'm part of the African diaspora, and how police have treated African Americans. But since I have an inside view, I know it's not as many bad apples as you think. And you can't let a couple of bad apples paint a picture of the whole situation. And just generalized racism in the entire system. It's just so damn complicated and I'm with you. If we're not talking to each other and coming together and trying to make the best city we can make, we don't have nobody to blame but ourselves.
I couldn't agree more, Carlos. Interesting. Mayor Lucas and I were on a Zoom call earlier this summer. There was a youth summit going on, and we both been asked to speak to like 40,000 kids were on this Zoom call and watching, and it was just basically about 3 minutes to talk about maybe what you did and ask the kids how they're doing and offer some resources. And so I was offering the resources of the Scholastic Crime Stoppers. They could anonymously call in or text in and report unsafe things, whether they were unsafe, whether parents were unsafe, or whether their fellow student or friend was unsafe. But what I left them with, though, was this challenge, and I think this addresses our issue. I think that, based on everything I've observed, the police departments and police in general have been going through an evolution of change, at least during my career. The type of policing that I saw when I first came in the job was something that I did not want to be a part of, but I had to make the decision to stay in it to try to affect change, or to just leave. And
can't make change from the outside for the most part.
You really
Julia Hill, when I first came here, I was a hellraiser, and I didn't like nothing that was going on. And she was like, "Young man, you can't make change in these political organizations or this organization. Get in the organization and do it from within."
Well, Carlos, that's what my message was to the 40,000 young people, is that be the change that you want to see. With everything happening today, just imagine if we really want to see change in the police, then the question is, if we don't encourage our young kids, if we don't encourage our children and our young teenagers to think about a career in law enforcement, how will we ever get the change that we want? We need to see our police department, from the day I began until now, I still believe that your police department should look like your community. Whatever your community looks like, that's what your police look like. We did a video a few years ago at the Crime Commission Luncheon that I think still gives me goosebumps, but the video showed about 10 people, men, women, young, older, black, white, Hispanic, and they were just talking about what they like to do. They're playing with their kids, they're riding their motorcycle, they're at the lake. And then the camera went dark and the music played and the lights came on. They were all in uniform. They were all police officers, but they looked just like me and you. But on that day, they put on a uniform. They go out there to hopefully protect their city and engage with their community to address common community problems. But the police aren't strangers. They're not the military. The police live in your community. They're your next door neighbor. They go to your church. They hang out at your bar. They go get their cut the same place you do. And I think that's important for us to remember.
I think that had changed over the years. I think I told you I'm from New York, and when the police, at least where I grew up, we had the PAL, and I'm saying back then they walked the beat with the nightstick. And I knew all the officers in my neighborhood, and they'll call your parents and tell them, "Hey, Nelson was over here doing this and this. I was going to do this, but I know what you're going to do to him when I talk to him." And it wasn't as much how things have evolved over the last, like I said, I'm 69. That was back in the 60s.
Things have evolved and changed. And I also want to, I think for me anyway, is to try to keep being open-minded to learn. I never would suggest that what we've done has always been best. I think that we're always in a state, hopefully, of improving and trying to do the right thing. We're having a new generation of kids that are stepping into adulthood that will they will be our leaders, and many of them already are. I think that I'm excited by the fact that change is good, and definitely improvement is something we should all be supportive of. And I would say this, and it needs to be said over and over again. We shouldn't be talking in the year 2020 about equity and justice for everyone like it's a conversation. To me, it always should have been, and it always should be. And we should never, ever relinquish that standard that every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, and that we shouldn't base any of our interactions on anything other than that kind of commonplace of reference. And I think that I'm all supportive for the idea that we continue to make that our mission. But I also think that the real work is, how do we go together? How do we work together to reduce crime, to ensure within law enforcement that our police officers treat everyone the right way? I think that there are ways we can do that and ensure that. And we need to get more young people into that career where they can be that.
That's what hold it. As you were talking, I was focusing on my next question. What would you say to young people as looking at the police force as a career? And I'm going to add this on. You know, when Ronald was the police, people was like, man, your brother-in-law is the police and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And he's with the white boys and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, so if he's not, a man of color's not in there, what do you have? You've got to have more people that look like you apply. And so what I wanted you to speak on that. What would you say to the young Kansas City audience that's coming out of college and high school as it relates to law enforcement as a career? And I'd like you to speak specifically to Black people.
Well, I think the most important thing is that when I was chief in KCK, a number of times I met with community leaders, and it was a daily, weekly occurrence, but some of the groups came together with the idea they wanted to have more minority officers on the police department. And my response immediately was, bring them to me. Encourage them, and we will do everything we can to get them through the process to get them hired. Because I was hungry, the appetite that I knew we needed to have more men and women of color. We also need one of our most underrepresented ethnicities to hire in law enforcement is Hispanic females. It's almost impossible. It's such a rare number so my point
didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I would say post Ferguson, Carlos, this is something for us to think about. When things happen and we get angry and we get mad, and rightfully so. I believe that the injustice is something that's hard to tolerate. But I also think that if we want to fix injustice, that we have to have a real plan. You know, my mother told me a long time ago, hope is not a plan. You know, we can't hope for it to get better. We got to do something to make it better. And it's hard work. I mean, real change takes hard work. And I think getting more people of color, both men and women, to engage in the career of law enforcement. So why is it enticing? Well, right now it doesn't look very enticing, but to me, if you're so passionate that you want to go out there and protest and raise and carry a sign, then take the next step and apply to become a change agent. Come into the organization to make it the kind of police you want to see. From a standpoint of college degrees, we pay better. Law enforcement today across Kansas City, starting salary is probably $40,000 or over. Benefits, retirement, you can live in your community, you can be that difference maker. If you don't think it's honorable, I would say I think it is. I think it's very honorable, but if you don't think it is, you can make it honorable. You can be that person to come in and engage and make it the kind of, and bring your friends, bring other people. I went to grade school, kindergarten, 5 years old, with one of my buddies named Greg Burris. We went through elementary, junior high school together, became cadets together, and we worked 35 years on the police department together. That kind of friendship or that kind of ability to grow up out of your neighborhood and spend your entire career, serving your community. To me, it's never look back. No regrets. Great experience, and I think young people, if they would give that a try, they can be that difference maker.
Hey, Rick, it was a pleasure having you on the show, and anything that Cascade Media can do as it relates to working with your organization, pick up the phone. And do you have any closing comments that you would like to impart to our audience?
Well, thank you for tuning in, and I hope the Crime Commission can be of assistance to you, that you can participate in. You can come to our website. We're at kc-crime.org. Our programs are right there. We're in the business of helping people. I didn't even mention our Second Chance program, which is reentry. We help over 400 people a year who come out of prison in Kansas City, help them find a job, help them find a place to live, help them get medical care, and help them learn some life skills to reacclimate and live a good life. And since program inception, which was in 2008, we have less than 5% of our people that come to our program recidivate or go back and commit crime again. I would argue it's one of my most passionate programs, and coming from my background, that might be a surprise, but I would say that's where the real work happens. People make mistakes, people make errors, but I think once they serve their time, they deserve every right that every other citizen has, and getting a job and us helping them is the right thing to do, and it's also the most productive thing to do.
On that note, let me say this. My godfather called DeCapo when Italian Gardens was in full swing. He had tons of second chance people that were coming out, and he was giving them a second chance. He was giving them a job. And I was like, Dad, what's wrong with you? Don't you know they're going to take everything out of the restaurant? Nah, call. And I really admired him. And what I want to say to you, the next meeting that he attends, and Carl is in his 90s now, give him my regards.
I will absolutely do that. And Carlos, thank you always for your time, your support, and the same thing back to you. Whatever the Crime Commission can do to be responsive to you and your listeners, please let us know. We're open to ideas. Anything that you can share with us, we'll take it on advice and try to do what we can to be responsive.
And as we always say in closing, all of our programs, sports, whatever it is, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
Nicely done.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.